Hi, welcome to another episode of MPP Solar training videos. Today we would like to talk about BMS, what it is, and how it works with MPP Solar inverters. BMS stands for Battery Management System, and it is basically a computer program inside a battery used to control and manage the way a battery is charged and discharged to ensure it stays healthy. Traditionally, batteries like lead acid do not have this type of protection in place, so they are much more susceptible to operational damage. But with the introduction of lithium, which is now basically the mainstream type of batteries, BMS is very common and exists virtually in all types of lithium batteries. The main purpose of using BMS is to ensure proper charging and discharging so that battery can be used safely without damage. To do this, it has a very specific voltage and current control in place, which is normally not shown to users, but instead are communicated automatically to the inverter once BMS is set up. In the event of a short circuit during installation, BMS can also protect battery by disengaging itself from the inverter. And last but not least, a successful BMS communication, both the inverter and the battery can synchronize its exchange of data seamlessly and minimize operational inconsistency. Let's take a look at the typical setup of a BMS connection in an inverter system. There are three things we should keep in mind when setting up BMS. First, we must use a lithium battery with compatible BMS protocol. Without having the right protocol, the inverter and the battery cannot communicate and will likely trigger a fault code. Second, we must also select the right profile on inverter's battery type setting to match the BMS we can use. We will talk more about this later. Finally, a wired physical connection is necessary to facilitate data exchange, so we need to make sure the BMS cable has correct pinout on both ends. So back to the first requirement, how do we confirm that we have the right protocol? On most MPP solar inverters with BMS features, Pylontech, Weco, and Sotero are the three main BMS brands that you'd commonly see. However, it is possible more BMS protocols may be adopted on our future inverters. When using a battery with an officially compatible BMS, simply select battery type setting from LCD and then choose the matching profile with your BMS. Now, there are also a few other profiles you may see from the battery type setting. LIB is basically MPP Solar protocol for RS485 interface. To use this profile, you will need to have your battery supplier implement the LIB protocol data on the battery in order to work. Next, LIC is basically the same as Pylontech, and this setting is reserved for any third-party battery manufacturers that are following Pylontech protocol. So you may use LIC or PYL, they are essentially the same. There is also another option called the LIA, which is the CAN bus equivalent of LIB but for a different interface. It's important to know not all of these profiles may exist on all MPP solar inverters, so be sure to check the user manual or LCD display directly to see what options are available to you. Note, the LIB and the LIA protocol data are available upon request. Once we have selected the correct profile, we then need to make sure that we use a BMS cable with the right pinout, and this applies to both ends of the system. One end to the inverter and the other end goes to the battery. On the inverter side, this is the default pin assignment of BMS port on an MPP solar inverter. To communicate using RS485 interface, we must use pin 3 and pin 5. On the other hand, if we wish to communicate using CAN bus interface, then you need to use pin 6 and pin 7. On the battery side, you will need to check with battery manufacturer and find out the correct pinout. So to conclude, if you are using MPP Solar inverters with a battery that has compatible BMS like PylonTech, then you can order the BMS cable directly from our website here at mppsolar.online, and at the top right hand corner, search keyword BMS or GO2 and you should be able to see the Gen 2 cable. One of the most common questions we get asked by users is, can I still use my MPP Solar inverter with a third-party battery with non-compatible BMS? The answer is yes, and there are two ways to do this. First, as we mentioned in the previous slides, user can request battery manufacturers to implement our MPP Solar BMS protocols on the battery, and that way you can use LIB with RS485 interface or LIA for the CAN bus. Another way is to bypass BMS altogether and manually set up the inverter to match the charging requirement of your battery. To do this, simply set both bulk and float voltage settings to be the same and match them equal to the maximum charging voltage specified by the manufacturer, and also have the low cutoff voltage matched to the minimum discharging voltage, again specified by the third-party manufacturer, and that's all you have to do. Finally, thank you for taking the time for watching this video. It has been our pleasure to share this with you, and we hope you find it useful. If you like this video, please remember to subscribe and stay tuned of the latest updates.